Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And the question that we have today, we're going to have one of our close friends give us a perspective on. As I think folks know, we love having founders. We've had a chance to back here, and Rajat is the founder of Chef Robotics, which we've had the honor of being partnered with for longer than he has been public about what he does, which just happened last week. And so excited for folks to get a chance to hear that. And, Rajat's history in starting companies and robotics goes deeper than most, academically and otherwise. He's had a bunch of different experiences that lead us to prompt this question, which is when you're leading a team and things happen, good things, bad things. The question is, how transparent should I be? It'd be just awesome to get any perspective, especially as people deal with a lot of difficult stuff the last few years.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on, Roy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here.
You and Bloomberg have been awesome partners, so I'm really grateful for partners. It's a really interesting question for me, and actually the impetus for me asking this question is I read a book by Reed Hastings about the Netflix culture. And I don't know how much you know about the Netflix culture, but I think
it's listed on our website. For folks who are watching for the first time, I'm a startup investor in the future work, and we have some readings on our website, including I think we linked to the Netflix culture deck. If we don't, we should.
Yes. And the other kind of big company I was inspired by is Bridgewater. So I both of those cultures I think are different, maybe to say the least. But I think both of them kind of shared this idea of kind of radical transparency. And initially, I was unsure, right? But their basic premise, which I really appreciated, was like treat people like adults. That was their kind of basic premise. And this really kind of was such a simple idea, but they kind of gave examples about how different companies ask you to get permission to do these little expenses when you can just hire somebody for a bunch of money, just like in a snap of a finger. So that was their premise. And I said, okay, well, we are a early stage robotics company. We're asking people to take these kind of pay cuts in lieu of equity. What if we take that kind of simple idea of let's treat people like adults and take it one step further, which is treat people like investors, treat employees like investors. So when I talk to an investor, you really kind of open up about the company, what's good, what's bad, and it's a partnership. Well, the way I kind of thought about this is, well, an investor is kind of investing with their capital, but an employee is really investing with their time. And arguably, time is even more important. Time is a non-renewable resource.
Yeah, I say this all the time to people who are joining a company. My job's easier because I get to have a portfolio. They have to pick one bet. And as you know, we are religiously adherent to transparency.
Yes.
If folks go to our website, they will see a shocking amount about what we do.
Yes.
So I'm feeling you, and I think it's a really different frame to treat the employees as investors.
Yes. And this is, I think, this part has been really, honestly, extremely important for Chef. I think transparency and treating somebody like an investor is actually very correlated. It's very, very connected. So it starts even in the interview process. We're very open. Look, this is who we are. We even send candidates some of our old fundraising decks. We talk about we send them all the some recent investor updates. We talk about here's what's going well, here's what's not going well. And I think people really appreciate that just in the interview process, because they're like, wow, my previous founders and companies, I didn't know anything that was happening. And here's a company that I'm not even there, and they're already telling me this stuff. And it builds a sense of, first of all, trust that they know what they're getting into, but perhaps more importantly, then when I have a conversation about, hey, look, this is kind of where we're at from a financial perspective, and this is why we need you to take a pay cut because we're an early stage company. We're going to give you all this equity, and here's why this equity is worth your while. And that conversation is actually much easier because they really believe in the company now. It's not just like a job. It's I'm asking them to kind of join our effort and invest your time in this effort. So that's kind of an interview process. And then when they actually join, we kind of open the Komodo, right? We have a central Google Drive. Everything's open to them. Central Notion, everything's open. All of our Slack channels are open. And we really encourage people to say no DMs, or unless it's basically extremely personal stuff or HR things. It's no DMs basically. And I think it's been incredible for us, because basically it's people feel like they're part of a mission, not just doing a job. And robotics is one of those businesses that's very interdisciplinary, right? You have a lot of things need to come together, right? The computer vision part needs to come together with the motion planning part needs to come together with electrical, with mechanical, with field operations, with customer success. Like all these things need to come together. And what's nice is that like if we have this culture of radical transparency, some software thing, some person on the software team will post something, and perhaps somebody on customer support is like, actually, no, that's not going to be good for the customer. Or the customer support person posts something, and the hardware person says, actually, I have an even better idea. And we can actually work together to actually have the best ideas. And of course, there's some, people aren't used to this. A lot of employees, when they join, they're like, it's different. So there is some kind of like, and they do DMs, and we have to kind of like nudge people towards like, hey, like you can just post that in the channel. You don't have to DM me.
And so you describe the benefits and how you do it, which is really valuable. There must be a reason why people are less transparent, and there must be limits to your transparency. And so how do you decide what the limits are, and what are the reasons to be less transparent rather than more?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story that some of my founder friends even have is like, if I tell the team about the bad news, like if customers unhappy, or investor said no, or this candidate that we were really close to closing said no, or the journalist said no, whatever, somebody said no, or the business isn't going well, whatever the thing is, the story they have is that the employee might leave, or they might not be excited about the company. And I think that's kind of a scary thought, right? So you kind of keep that close to your chest. You share the good news, but you don't share the bad news. At least that's what I've understood. Now that might not be fully formed, but that's at least what I've understood. I've actually found the opposite, which is interesting, which is that
I'll just say, I think that there are a bunch of other reasons. Like one, and look, I say this as a transparency devotee, but one reason is it's extremely time consuming to be this transparent. Another is that it creates swirl, meaning people overreact to things that just don't matter that much when they are provided, in my opinion, when you provide them with lots of information. So I think there are other good reasons, but I do think you're right that the core reason is, will I break the confidence of the team by exposing them to negative things that they are unprepared to interpret in context?
Yes, it's exactly. It's like, hey, look, like this person's happy. Why do I need to taint their whatever, their day, their week by like some bad news, right? I think for us, it's actually been the opposite. So, I mean, again, robotics is one of those businesses where like uptime is really important. There's been instances where like in the past, like, a couple of years ago, for example, where like, we had these incidents with downtime at customer sites, and like the customer was pissed at us, and they're like, hey, like you need to fix this or leave, right? And initially, like, like my feeling was like, oh, this is scary, right? What's going to happen here? But I told the team, hey, look, this customer, like we have this like RAG status, for example, like every Monday we kind of present, here's the status of every customer. Here's how every customer is kind of doing. And we're like, look, these customers are red. I think that actually we might lose them unless we fix this. And that was kind of scary, right? I mean, it was kind of vulnerable for me to say this, but at the same time, like the team was like completely rallied around it. People stayed super late. People did whatever needed to be done to fix this. Obviously, we saved the customer, and it actually built trust. Like I actually think it wasn't like a negative. It actually built trust because people are like, I can trust the founder. He's not going to lie to me.
How do you think about what the limits are of the transparency that you?
Yeah, I think like we don't talk about like any HR information, like salary, equity, things like this. I mean, that's like the only thing that like formally comes to mind. Like a lot of times people even ask, like when we're doing a fundraise, people ask me, hey, how are these conversations going? And initially I'm like, well, do I need, sometimes like, do I need to tell you, or like, but then I'm like, no, they're investors in the company. Like, here's what the status is. And people are usually like, okay, what can I do to help you? So basically the only limits for me that really come to mind is HR and equity.
And why are those? Because there are companies that are public about that too.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think it's just because like, it does feel like a sensitive topic, and it just feels like it's a very personal topic.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it, we also don't share those things internally. Yes. And it's because it's not just our company's information. It's also information that belongs to that other person. If anybody on my team wanted to share with the rest of the team, by all means, you should feel free to. I just don't want to out them without their consent. And we feel the same way about companies and funding rounds. Like we would happily disclose the exact terms on which we invested in every company. I think we're even public about that. We've done it once, maybe twice in the past, but that's not our choice. It's a shared choice with us and the founder of the company in which we're an investor. And so to some extent, it's just about, to me, about where is the locus of responsibility live.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think there are times where like I do agree with your point there. Like there are times when it's like there's so much like things to overreact to, right? Like now, so for example, now at Chef, we made over 20 million meals. We just have a lot of volume of stuff happening in the
And
world.
sorry, when you say you've made meals, maybe you can just explain to people for 1 second, and I'll put the website up. What does the company do?
Yeah, so we make AI-enabled robots for the food industry, and we're starting with food manufacturing, which is interesting because most food robotics companies that you might have heard about, they start with restaurants. We think manufacturing is the right way to start, and basically these are like prepared meals that you might find at a hospital system or an airplane or a frozen meal or meat packing, things like this. So to date, Chef has actually now made 20 million meals in production. We have robots all over North America. That's kind of what we do.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Any parting thoughts before we wrap on wisdom about transparency? Something surprised you about how something might work, or a technique or anything like that?
I think there is a lot of content, and it is easy to overreact. Like I think your point about that is very true. Like in fact, even for me, sometimes I'll just post a random thought I had, and I'm the founder, and somebody is going to be like, "Oh, Rajat said this. I need to do this." Like it's critical, but it's actually like for me, it's like a P2 P3. It's just an idea I had. So I do think it's important to like say like level set a little bit. Like, hey, this is the thought I had. It's an idea. I don't expect people to do this tomorrow. And people will sometimes overreact, and I think it's important to just like level set with them.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, for folks who are here for the first time, the reason we say this is not advice is because we're not telling you what to do in your case. We're sharing Rajat's experience, which I think is really profound and valuable. And it seems like in the comments, we're seeing, a lot of support, including some people describing the benefit. In fact, I'm just going to put this comment up, maybe a little difficult to read, but you can save time on transparency by providing a flow chart that employees have access to. Yeah, I mean, I find that transparency is time consuming up front, but over time, really does a lot that benefits a company, including saving time. And if folks want to see this and other episodes, they can find them on thisisnotadvice.work. And Rajat, you're welcome back absolutely anytime, and really grateful that we get to serve you as our customer, and that you've been so transparent with us. So thank you, and to be continued.
Yeah, thanks so much, Roy.